Today we're going to be discussing issues around the importance of authentic LGBTQ representation in games, the industry and the games media. We've got 4 lovely panellists. I'll introduce myself first. So I'm Richard Franke. I run my own games company, Magic Notion, a very small micro developer in Guildford. I've got all my team that work remotely. We made a game called Kitty Powers Matchmaker, Kitty Powers Love Life, and we've just done Kitty Powers Speed Date. There's a theme running through there. I do moonlight as Kitty Powers as well, and I also do full-time work at Media Molecule on Dreams for PlayStation 4. Then we have the lovely Ed Fear. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello. My name is Ed Fear. I'm a senior writer and designer at Mediatoni. I generally... I really should have thought about this before I started. I generally do a lot of writing and designing for games within Mediatoni, and also freelance. I've worked on games like The Swords of Ditto. I worked on Kitty Powers Love Life with Richard. And Hatoful Boyfriend, which some of you may know as the pigeon dating game. Yes, I'm currently directing my first game at Mediatoni, which is not deliberately becoming very gay.
Hello, I'm Claire Sharkey. I am head of marketing and PR for Weather Factory. We only have one game so far called Cultist Simulator, but as of today, we've announced a new game called Book of Hours. So I'd be a bad marketeer if I didn't just randomly plug that in. And I also run my own consultancy company called Sharkbit, and it's just the same sort of thing. I'm trying to help out indie companies with their marketing and PR needs. I also help run Coven Club, which is a sort of social event for people who identify as women in the games industry, and that happens once every month. And every now and again I do an event called Pixel Inebriation, and the point of that event is to just help people who feel a bit socially awkward about the whole networking and meeting people in the industry, which can be quite a daunting thing, and that's open to anybody at all to come. And sometimes I moonlight as a grumpy bear, all the time, so not as skilled as you, but yeah, so that's me.
I'm Robin Gray. I'm the founder of Gayming magazine, which launches tomorrow.
Gaming with a Y.
Gaming with a Y.
What's the Earl?
Oh, the Earl. The Earl. It's gaymingmag.com. GAYMING mag.com. I don't know why I backed myself into a corner to spell it then for a second. Which is, as it says on the tin, it's going to be a full-service LGBT video games magazine, all online, all digital. Check it out; it'd be really cool. We'll talk about it more later on, I imagine.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Izzy. I'm a freelance PR manager. Previously at a lovely PR agency called Indigo Pearl. I've just started freelancing, so I'm terrified of taxes at the moment, so please don't say anything to me about money, because I will cry. But yeah, hopefully I can be of some interest today, talking about hopefully not only my problems, but also things that I think. So yeah.
Excellent. So now we've got to know this lot. We're going to talk about games, industry and media, which are the things that we're talking about, right? So we're going to focus on those. We'll take each one at a time. Since we've got about an hour, I think we'll do 15 minutes on each. We can always we can go with the flow with that thing, and then we'll leave some Q&A at the end, another 15 minutes. So if anyone's got a watch hand, I think someone in the back's going to wave at me. Anyway, so let's start with gaming, shall we? So we're talking about authenticity of representation. So why don't you all give me an example of what games you feel do a good job of that?
Okay, I'll go first, I guess. One example I can think of is Gone Home, which I think is not only a very beautiful game, but it integrates kind of a queer love story into the main narrative in a really natural and organic way. And it kind of goes quite deep into those experiences that I think a lot of queer people can relate to. And it's not a voice that's kind of portrayed as different or outcasted. It's kind of a very genuine expression of a queer experience from the perspective of someone else. So, yeah, that's my example.
I'm going to go a bit more mainstream. I'm going to say Dragon Age. I think just the pure... considering its age, and I think it was quite pioneering in that sense for a AAA, but I think also the nature of all the characters, the diversity that's sort of represented in that. And I was chatting earlier to someone and I said Borderlands 2 as well, because I think that the ability there, and we can talk about it more in a minute, but about authentic representation is you just have to listen and they say something and it moves on. There's nobody there really sort of jumping around going, I'm gay. It really is just they say something and move on.
It's stuff that happens.
It's just stuff that happens.
Amongst
They
all the other
just
stuff
mention
that
it and just
happens.
get on with their lives. And I think that actually is a good example of what I would term sort of authentic representation.
Right, you Claire.
So the last game that had sort of gay representation that sort of struck a chord with me more than just it existed was Mass Effect Andromeda. I love the game, by the way, so if anyone hated it, I don't know what to say. I love the game. And there's a character in that, and it is the first character that I've ever identified with in a video game, and I never thought that was important to me until I met this character in a game, and that is Suvi Anwar. And so Suvi is Scottish, I'm Irish. She's a person of science, but she believes in God. I'm Catholic, I'm one of those. And she's exclusively gay. So this was somebody, and she was written really well, and all these important facets of her life were just BioWare, I thought, did a really good job of writing them and including them, but also in a way that was just natural. And as you said, I think the best representation is one where people aren't like, oh, or it's shoehorned in, it's just natural. And yeah, it represented a couple of important facets of my life. So yeah, Mass Effect Andromeda. All the BioWare games are usually really good at that, apart from Anthem, which isn't even good at being a game.
I've got to be honest, I don't know if there particularly are any that I have particularly liked or identified with. There have been moments where I have seen almost a kind of allyship in games from characters who are not gay, but will just kind of make an offhand comment with the fact that they are fine with it, which sounds a bit weird, but believe it or not, in Metal Gear Solid 2, Solid Snake makes a really weird off reference to somebody who's getting funny about something, and he's like, well, would it be funny if it was a man and a woman, or are you just being funny with it because it's two men? And that moment for me when I was like 18 was like, oh my god, like they're recognizing that we exist. It may not be actually be a gay character, but like this character is saying that they wouldn't have a problem with me, and that felt to me like a really big issue, like a really big thing. So yeah, I think there's a lot of games. I think Nier Automata is also does have a lesbian character, but again, it's only mentioned once, kind of in passing, and no big deal is made of it. Those are kind of the ones I think that have really struck a chord with me. It's just not really expecting it, and it's kind of being there.
I have played The Sims. When I made my game Love Life, it's a little bit like The Sims, but it's more focused on the relationships and less on the going to the toilet and eating. And people said similar things about my first game, Matchmaker, where it was procedural and it made no difference what gender was matched with what gender. They had preferences, but you would get all sorts through the door. And we treated everyone the same. You know, male and female shared the same dialogue. And we got a lot of good feedback about that as well. And I love games like that, which are procedural and you can create your own narrative. I think they're just as important. They're like toys, like you say, rather than written narratives.
So on the Swords of Ditto, which I just worked on, that's like a randomly generated roguelike, and there's every time you play it, there's new NPCs, and I had to write dialogue for each of them. But at the point of writing, I never knew whether they would be assigned to a female or to a male. And we actually very deliberately made the decision early on that people would refer to their husbands and their wives, and so that for some people's playthrough, those characters might be gay, and for some other people's playthroughs, they might be straight. And then there was a really interesting thing where we had to do randomly generated quests as well. And because of that, I didn't know who you'd be talking to. So we couldn't say he or she, so we just had to say them or they, because we didn't know what the gender of the target of the quest would be. And it was, to be honest, we did it because that was the practical answer. But I've had quite a few people message me and say, "Oh, it's so nice to see that like this person's got a non-binary partner or something," I feel a bit like a fraud because it wasn't deliberate. But I'm really glad that they could find. Yeah, I know, but I'm really glad that they could find. You know, the fact that they took the time to message me meant that they found it to be a nice moment.
There is little things like that which may seem throwaway to some people, but are very meaningful to other people, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, on the subject of authenticity, I was on another panel recently, and a lady from King said they have a system where they run all their game character designs and game designs through a system to test them for how diverse they are, and almost wondered whether that made them less authentic.
Is this a computer-based system, or is it
I think apparently she said it was automated. I don't know the details because I don't work for King, but and you know, you could say that my game with its procedural systems, or the Sims, where it chucks people out of, you know, you can randomise things. Is that different or the same? You know, what are your thoughts on that? Does it require someone LGBTQ to be on the dev team in order to make something authentic?
I think it's really important to have the right people in the room around the table. I think there's been examples, particularly recently, particularly Assassin's Creed, particularly a particular DLC, which if there were an LGBT person sat in that room, they'd have gone, no, don't do that. Don't try and force someone back into the closet because you need to get on and do the storyline. That just wouldn't happen. And I think you need to make sure that you've got people sat around the table giving that human input. I think machines can do so much. They can maybe detect certain characteristics, certain settings, but I think unless you actually have someone with a voice in the room, I don't think you're going to have that nuance.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can automate a humanly lived experience that's so nuanced as identity and sexuality and gender expression. I don't think you can put those things into automated categories that would come out the other end looking like the genuine, authentic experience of an actual human being, unless it's AI, in which case I'm terrified.
I think this comes back to, and I won't dive into too much about how important recruitment processes are and diversity in companies are, because it is good to have a human involved when it's this sort of topic, but at the same time it's better if you had more than one option of a human, so not just one person, because different people have different gay experiences and different, there could be a panel of 10 people and there's one person, and the company is allowing that one person to be the dictator of what a proper gay representation is. But then there could be another person and they might have a different idea of it. So that harks back to, having a company full of loads of different people, and that includes, LGBT is not all, we all have different opinions on how certain characteristics and certain representation is. So I think.
Do you then think, though, that design by committee might be a problem, where things just get wishy-washy and lack an opinion?
Well, again, the more diverse you are, the more likely you're going to have people that they're not all just going to be yes, 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 okay, blah, blah, blah. You'll have people, hopefully, that will have a little debate about things, and, you'll have a proper discourse and a proper discussion about it to get the best quality that reaches as many people. But you know that you can't keep everybody happy, sadly, but the intent and the wishes behind it certainly matter, and doing the best to do that helps.
Yeah.
I would also say that it's also, being that person in the room who is around the table is actually quite terrifying. So in my current project, I am writing a gay character, and I feel this incredible pressure to get it right and to make it authentic. And I only really know about my own experience, and I'm not writing myself. I'm writing a character which I feel is quite. based on what I'm seeing in kind of popular society now, which is kind of an increased, slowly increasing acceptance of feminine kind of gay men, like for example Jonathan from Queer Eye, or and kind of, so I'm trying to do this thing where I'm trying to write what I consider a third wave gay character, which is, you know, the first wave is, oh, they're a stereotype, oh, you know, they like a bit of that, you know, and the second wave is, oh, they, you know, being gay is just a very small part of their character, it's not anything at all. And I'm kind of trying to do a third wave character where I'm like, well, if they want it to be a part of who they are and their personality, then that's up to them. Like, so I'm kind of leaning on some stereotypes, and I find it really hard to draw the line between stereotype and that. And what I found really useful is that we have a LGBT group in Mediatonic, which is got about 17 people in it. And I will quite often just run scenes past them. Like, I'll just copy it into the chat room and be like, what do you guys think of this? And I remember the first time I ever put this character to them, they were like, he's really filthy and a bit predatory. And I was like, oh God, that's not what I meant at all. That's really not what that's like. That wasn't my intention at all, but it was getting these opinions. And I was like, okay, yeah, I was relying a bit on innuendo, and that's what I was trying to actually get away from. But I guess for some reason I just used it as a crutch or whatever. So it was thanks to them that I was able to make it a more, hopefully making him a more rounded character. But it's really hard, and it does feel, you do feel like a sense of pressure. Like, if there's one gay person in the room, then suddenly you're the voice of all gay people, and that's not a great position to be in, because we all make mistakes and we all have different experiences. Like Claire said.
Speaking of stereotypes, then obviously stereotypes and identities are linked. Now, do you think there's a danger of what in your view are the dangers of stereotyping, and when is it okay to use a stereotype then? I
have been asking myself this question a lot, and I don't have a full answer. But what I'm coming to feel is that the fact of life is that we all rely on stereotypes a lot, and we all conform to certain stereotypes in different ways and different stereotypes. But the reason they are stereotypes is because they are common. So what I'm trying to do is rely on, kind of identify with them when it's right for the character, but also give them extra depth so that they're not just stereotype.
In my opinion, I think there's it's important to make a difference between a stereotype and kind of a trend of identity. I think not all stereotypes are necessarily negative, and I think sometimes they can be very validating and grounding. Like, for example, there's a stereotype that lots of lesbians have septum piercings. That's not necessarily negative, but like, is a bit true.
It's a language, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just kind of about knowing. It's very obvious when somebody only knows about the negative stereotypes and isn't kind of very in deep in the community, and they don't really know the nuance behind presentation and identities. And it's kind of important to produce those authentic, genuine opinions and experiences. But yeah, my opinion is that necessarily not all stereotypes are negative, and sometimes they can be very validating and grounding.
I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think some stereotypes are empowering almost. I think it's who we are, and we have to claim that. I think the risk of doing it maybe in games is to stand out, like what we were talking about with some of the games at the top, in a faux pro-LGBT kind of way. So I think there's a risk sometimes where people say, hey, we've got a gay character, look, he's sort of over there waving his rainbow flag or doing something like ludicrously gay, and it's like, oh, that's the gay one. Whereas the flip side of it is what we talked about authentic representation, about actually having people that just say a guy talking about his boyfriend, done, move on, next conversation, or a woman talking about their partner and being maybe slightly ambiguous about it. That's life, that's the reality of it. I think it's a very delicate line, but I think it's one, you mentioned Ed Jonathan earlier from Queer Eye. I think he almost is because he's just authentically true to himself, people might see him as a stereotype. People might think, oh, he's camp, effeminate, etc. But no, he's just himself. And I think if you can believe that however they've written that character is done in the most authentic way with the best of intentions, I think employing a stereotype is a good thing in that sense, because that's who that person is.
What are you, Claire?
I mean, they've all said it. There's good and bad. No, like you've covered it. You did my work for me. There's good and bad stereotypes. It's just a case by case basis. It depends what it is, how it's said. I mean, there's people you'll talk to your friends in a way that you wouldn't talk to other people. So there's different degrees and there's different levels. But on the public side of things, yeah, it completely depends. So. Yeah.
I've been accused of being a stereotype. I'm a video game character. When I was young, the worst part of growing up was not having anyone visible to me that I knew was gay and who made me feel like it was okay. So it's important for me that, okay, maybe I am a stereotype, but I'm just making sure that those youngsters know that I'm the gay one, because then, because you can't be subtle with either youngsters or the general public. I found you kind of have to, for want of a better no, I'm not going to go there, but you know what I mean. You've got to make it up front, otherwise it just goes over people's heads. That's my reasoning anyway. And I like pink. It's my form of protest. Okay, so we've talked about games. Let's talk about the industry a little bit. What are your personal experiences of being LGBTQ in the games industry? And do you think there are any things unique to the games industry, perhaps, that you might not find in other industries?
Personally, my experience in the industry, kind of being behind the scenes, has been quite positive because I don't have to interact with the public. I think it's a very different experience than, say, being a streamer and being at the forefront in front of an audience where lots of people can have different opinions and not necessarily all good ones. But within the industry itself, my experience has been very positive. And I think that's because different to a lot of industries is we come from a creative medium that is based a lot on performative aspects. And I think those aspects of performance that exist within video games kind of do align with the performative aspect of queerness that we all kind of internalize throughout our lives. And we learn how to perform at a very young age. We learn different aspects of performance and what we do and like how we present ourselves in order to make ourselves safe, but also in order to make ourselves feel seen. And I think that's a lot, that aspect does align itself with the actual medium of video games itself, and it's a really important one that I think especially queer people can relate to.
So I'm a little bit different in the sense that my sort of employment has been video games sort of industry adjacent, as I'm sort of more on the media side of things. So I get to sort of look from the outside in. Agree with everything Izzy just said. I think it's by the nature of the industry and the creative industries as a whole are exceptionally pro-LGBT. That being said, from my point of view, looking inwards, I'm still surprised at how the industry, particularly the video games industry, is still trying to maybe sort of free itself from some old shackles of the sort of straight boys club.
Toxic masculinity.
Exactly. The number of games still that play from an assumed straight point of view. Again, we're sort of getting back onto games a little bit, but I think the industry as a whole, I've been fine. I am fine. I sort of run a number of magazines to do with a lot more LGBT communities. The video games industry, the responsibility that I think that we have, or I have as Gayming magazine, is to float up some of these success stories high up the agenda into the public eye a bit more. And I think that's where, I mean, we're sat on a panel with two other people that tomorrow are going to have interviews in Gaming Magazine. Going to be Rich and Claire. We're going to be continuing that theme of spotlight interviews going forward, and so every month or two there's going to be another couple of people that are going to be featured, and it's a way of shining a light on different parts of the industry and saying, look at all these LGBT people in the industry, look at them, float them up to the top, and celebrate that, and celebrate the diversity of the industry. Because I still think that even people in the industry who are LGBT, I'm not sure even they know just how LGBT the industry is becoming. So I think the opportunity that we have now is to start to celebrate that and really sort of push that forward.
Yeah, I've been in the industry for quite a long time, not as long as some, but coming up to 11 years, originally as a journalist and then about 9 years as a developer. And, you know, where I work now is great. We have, like I said, we have a great LGBT group. We're having a company-wide pride party next week. You know, and it's really great, and people feel really included and like they have a voice. It certainly wasn't like that at the beginning. You know, my first job in journalism was quite a masculine environment. I'm laughing because my boss from then is in the room, and it was a very kind of macho environment, and I was the only gay person, and you know, you do get a bit of gentle ripping from it. Oh. That sounds like a good thing. Yeah, I know. And yeah, it was a very masculine, I don't know if I would say toxic, but it was a very, very masculine, sometimes maybe a bit toxic. But it was a very masculine environment. And certainly the first studio as well was very much the old boys club, still kind of a hangover from the old days where there were not very many women and it was very rowdy. And yeah, it was a very masculine environment. And again, I was the only gay person. And and certainly when I joined Mediatoni, there were maybe 5 people, and now there's like 17. So things are definitely getting a lot better, and it's really great that that Robin and people are kind of shining a spotlight on that, because the industry has become a lot more professional, I would say, over the last decade. And yeah, it is a much more welcoming environment now.
My job is behind the scenes and public facing. I've not really encountered any personal attacks based on being gay. Anyway, anytime I've ever encountered it, which has been rare, is me interjecting on behalf of somebody else, that I see that people are being, I can't profane, not being very nice people, and because I'm just an absolute brick, I will, you know, sort of interject, and that's happened very rarely, but I haven't really experienced anything. Where I'm at currently, Weather Factory, we're a small team, but we just happen to be predominantly all our staff are LGBTQ+, and that just happens to be accidental. What I've experienced the most in past roles is I've usually been in a company where I'm the only woman. One of my previous jobs recently was that. And straight men were just a little bit dumb. They kind of thought because if you are a laid back person, they can say things and you're okay with it. So they would assume that they could talk about females that they see walking past, and that I would join in the banter and all that sort of stuff. So it's usually not an attack on me, but just an attack on general cringiness and decency, basically that. But no, I can't say that I've suffered anything at all.
I've worked at a few places in the years I've been in the industry, Ed, and I've had very few incidents of that sort of thing. I had 1 or 2. They weren't that bad. I coped. I went to HR and told them it had happened. But because I didn't know who had done it, I just made sure they were aware. I think when you've grown up LGBTQ, you're very good at handling things diplomatically. But I'm surprised there's been very little, to be honest, although I suppose being a white man does get you some kind of privilege. Being a drag queen on the internet, though, I was surprised by how few trolls I attracted, and actually very surprised and happy about the comments on my YouTube videos, because my first game went viral on YouTube. An awful lot of young kids, not even realising I was what a drag queen was. They didn't know what a drag queen was. So all these little kids realising that men could dress up as women, I just thought my job here is done, kind of thing.
Yeah, but I do also just want to address, because we have all had quite positive experiences, that there are people in the industry, I think, who I don't want to speak over, but I do want to bring light to, I think, issues that the industry is having still with, for example, trans people, non-binary people. I think that because in society these issues seem to have just recently come to light. I mean, they've always been there, but people have just started to notice, and when more people start to notice, positive things happen, but with that also negative things happen. So obviously, just because we've all had positive experiences to some degree, I think it's still important to give support and to elevate the voices of people who might not have such positive experiences in the industry.
How do you think the games industry, what are the areas then that you think we need to focus on now, having improved some of the areas that have improved, like with trans folk? Mm-hmm. Is that where you think we really ought to focus now, or?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what do you think the industry can do to improve that situation?
I think a lot of the time within the industry, a lot of negative thought or a lot of ignorant thought does come from ignorance. And it's not necessarily always, coming from a place of negativity or genuine hatred. A lot of the times it is ignorance when we're in an industry that's roots were laid in like straight cis white men. I think that's just a natural side effect of it. So I think education is quite key to that, but also kind of protecting and supporting vulnerable people in the industry who really need it. That's really, really important, because I think a lot of the time when you feel like you're in a subcategory of a subcategory of a subcategory, your importance and self-worth can kind of feel diminished by everyone around you. And yeah, I think support and education are the two primary things that we should focus on right now.
Anybody else got anything to add?
Well, I mean, the goal should be, and this sounds very simple and very dreamy, the goal should be that every human being that works in this industry or in the industry, but they should feel comfortable and they shouldn't have to, experience what they are experiencing. So yeah, I'll back up what Izzy is saying. But yeah, there's still problems that are wide scoping and they affect everybody. And I think we still need to get to the stage where it's as simple as that, making sure everybody feels included. And as you say, if you're a subcategory of a subcategory, you're going to feel as if you're not being heard at all. So we need to make sure that people are being heard and that there is some sign that doing is happening and action is happening. I think I've said this a few times today on an earlier panel. Talking is great and talking with each other is great, but we need to get to a point where we're doing alongside the talking, because talking can only loop so often.
So beyond having a pride float and sticking some rainbows up in the office, what else can we do?
Well, I think it's really important that we also recognise that things may be better for us where we're working, but in the communities that our games are played in the communities that our games foster, there's a hell of a lot of toxicity online and on Twitter and we really need companies that create things that are enjoyed by our community need to take some kind of responsibility for policing that community and making sure that it's an inclusive place for everyone. And that's not really my area of expertise, but I have worked on a game that had a small community on a forum, and I would have to occasionally step in and be like, no, okay, we're not having that kind of discussion. It wasn't even our forum. I had no power. But it turns out that if you just act, for them anyway, if you just acted like you had a bit of power, they tend to fall in line. But I think that sort of thing shouldn't be ad hoc. Like any especially mobile games, especially multiplayer games that are bringing people together. We really need to start being proactive about how we foster positive communities, I think, and trying to kind of root some of that out.
Yeah, I think we can all have the experience, I'm sure, but the issues around online gaming are hideous. I mean, the stories around just when Overwatch with Soldier 76, when that whole thing happened with him coming out, and people were sort of being pursued around the game who were playing as that character, and because people wanted to go and shoot Soldier 76 because he's now gay, and it suddenly became like, where on earth did all this come from, and where do we end up at? I'm not saying we're going to be the salve that will solve everything, but I'd like to think that having Gaming Magazine is going to be part of the long-term conversation, at least, which may or may not provide a solution or two. Hopefully it does. But just by providing that sort of safe space, that place where people can come and enjoy their games as a companion site to the mainstream sort of media and everything else, I think for us, we're having those conversations, giving people the opportunity to have their say in a sort of constructive and a safe way, and floating again some of these other sort of subcategories right up to the top, and actually going, you know what, let's just talk about this. This game has a really interesting trans element to it, and oh look, there's a trans developer, let's talk about all that together and start stitching these conversations together, that actually people start to see themselves in the media of the companies that they love, and I think that hopefully will start to just generally just make things a bit nicer, and trickle down, trickle up, and trickle each way, and hopefully would sort of be a solution in all of that.
So talking about the media then, sorry, let me just get my script, which I've already apologised for. Let's talk about the press then, since we have press people. What do you think is the importance of the LGBTQ press related to games? I mean, you've already got an audience that wants to listen to you. How are you going to make that transcend to make other people accepting as well, I guess?
Well, I'll give you a good example. So a friend of mine is a journalist who writes for a number of places, Freelance, and she was telling me about one title that won't be named, that is a mainstream video game magazine.
Yeah.
And she herself is a straight woman, but she has a lot of trans friends as writers. And they pitch in their stories all the time. And editorially, the magazine, I think they've run one in the last 2 years. Now, I see it from an editorial point of view. I do get it. You've got a magazine that's going to be talking about games in a very sort of heteronormative kind of way. Editorially, it'll clang if you start to sort of put these sort of very left field contributors in that are talking about stuff that people just reading the magazine just won't get. Where we come in is being able to offer people the opportunity to have those pieces published, giving a diverse sort of voices to people that love games, that want to talk about their games and talk about their love for games, who at the moment can't get published. Well, now we're here and we are sort of full LGBTQ. Guess what? You can come and pitch to me, and we'll run that. Probably. No. I'm joking. It'll be a balance.
It's good enough.
It'll be a balance. But there's obviously writing standards and stuff. But the opportunity now for people to come and have their say, I think it comes back to what we were talking about, having certain voices in the room. We're also going to have now different voices in the media, different voices online. And I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally a lot of change does come from within. Especially in our industry, that can feel quite gatekeepery and quite niche sometimes. I think it's really important to have those voices on the inside that have some form of authority, that people who might need their minds changing about something or might feel like they need to be educated about something specifically to do with like queer characters in gaming or why they're important or anything like that. It's important to have those voices on the inside with a platform who are able to reach people that it needs to reach?
I think it's great that Gayming magazine exists, and it will be a great way of, as you say, people who haven't been able to pitch or get their stuff published. There's an avenue there that isn't going to be as, not closed-minded, but let's just say closed-minded compared to other publications. But at the same time, if we want to spread the word more and have people exposed to more people, and to help people who won't go to a gaming magazine because they don't think it's for them, etc. The more non-specific publications, the big gaming ones, they need to be a bit more inclusive in who they allow to contribute. So just allow more opinions to come through. There was an article that I wanted to write about, and I'm not a journalist, I do some freelance stuff, but there was an article I wanted to write about Suvi Anwar from Mass Effect Andromeda, because as I say, I didn't realise how big a deal it was until I played this character. And I'm like, oh my god, here's a character that is as close to me as possible. I've already said that. I would like to write about it, and I'd like to share it, because I haven't seen anybody talking about it. And I pitched it to a bunch of different UK-based magazines that people probably have heard of, and none of them wanted to take it, even though I had seen other articles about LGBTQ related stuff, and they didn't want to take it. The reason they didn't want to take it is because they thought the Christianity side of it was actually going to be the deterrent, especially mixed with the LGBTQ side of things as well, and that peeved me off quite a bit. And then one site took it, but it was a business site, so nobody that I wanted to share this with, nobody who is just like somebody that plays games or just goes online, nobody that's non-industry is going to see this, really, unless it's shared on Reddit or something. And I thought, well, that's a missed opportunity, because I know that there's people out there that would really find this here something nice. I know there's plenty of people that, are of all sorts of denominations while also being gay, and this would have been something important. And again, I was pitching to people I knew as well. That didn't help. In the games industry, there's this here common sort of thing. It's the people you know more than anything. That can be the case. In this case, it just didn't work for me. So there you go. But my job in relation to press is, as a marketeer and PR person, I would create press releases, and I talk to the press to obviously promote something. For example, Weather Factory's Cultist Simulator, we have a very high density of LGBTQ community members, and I'm not doing anything specific in press releases. I'm not doing anything in terms of, deliberately targeting people. The game happens to have a lot of gay characters that you can romance, and we have some trans characters that you can romance and everything. In the game, if heterosexual people romance each other, this is not on purpose, it's not anti-straight, but they explode. So, and that genuinely was a thing that just happened in the lore. It's not on purpose. But yeah, so like gay people can have sex and not explode, which I think is a nice perk in a game. But we didn't do anything. The reason we have that community is because of that element of the game, but because everything we do all the time, not just in targeted press releases and marketing, reflects what our brand principles are. And our brand principles are that we are all about inclusion. And you can say, God, we're all about inclusion, aren't we great? But you need to practice that. So every bit of messaging we do, while it doesn't say, oh my God, we're so gay friendly, everything else about us tells people that we're a company that you can come and work for, which now, as I said, we're primarily LGBTQ staff members. And I think your messaging is very important. I ramble too much there, and you're right. Standing, so it's all awkward now.
But that, to me, just really quickly on that one, sorry, about press releases and that sort of thing. I want to be able, now we have gaming, I want people to be able to sort of say, well, in the same way that people will write press releases, and I used to be in PR myself, so I know press releases sometimes get written, like we need to attract these people, so we'll go and write this particular press release and we'll send it to those. I want to be in a position where people are starting to think again about the LGBT angle. I want people to sort of go, well, now there is an outlet, we can do this in a really positive way and send it to that wonderful outlet. But picking up on what you said, you know what, if in 3 years' time we're dead in the water because everybody else is talking about LGBTQ stuff in the mainstream, I'll take that as a win, really, in some ways. I probably won't financially, but but from an ethical point of view,
we need to be,
if we've inspired other magazines to sort of get into the fields that we're in and talk about the things that we're going to talk about, I see that as a good thing.
There needs to be a place where everything's going to be LGBTQ for people that want that to come to, right? Or even people that can't go anywhere else for it, can go on the internet for it.
I think it's, yeah, and to be honest with you, I want straight people to come to Gaming Magazine as well. And I want it to be the quality of our journalism and the quality of the stories being told and the interesting things that we might be talking about, or even Ms. Kitty Powers and her monthly review of games, and done in the way that she can only do it best. I think that in itself could be a reason why we can keep going. And obviously, I'm talking about the death of the thing when it hasn't even launched yet. But that's the sort of that's my sort of gut feeling behind it. I think yes, people will always need somewhere to go, but I want people to come to it as well, who maybe are straight and don't fit in the community, but just want to. And I think that comes back to what you were saying about education.
Fabulous.
Hi, thank you very much. I had a question about workplace stuff and how to be able to. It's a lot of energy to come out again and again in an industry where we need to basically change workplaces to move up, and how to be able to say, hey, I'm a big LGBT person and I can help you guys with something without scaring everyone, or that kind of feeling.
Well, I mean, ideally, you should be able to have this conversation with HR. HR's main job is to look after the company, and the best way they can look after the company is making sure that they give no reason for people that work in that company to have anything negative said about them. So if HR care, you should be able to talk to HR and offer that service. And I'm pretty sure a lot of HR people would love, the way I'm saying HR people as if there's some sort of gremlins that come out of the sea. But
stereotyping.
I'm pretty sure that most that I know of, or at least in the past, would really benefit from somebody taking the initiative, basically, and doing that. So I think communicating with HR would be great. Or just get whoever looks after the social media to just be like, there's a gay person in the company right now. Please say hello. There's cupcakes in the kitchen. One method or the other, but try the HR one first.
Or get a septum piercing, apparently.
Like a massive one.
Just a really big one.
I agree with the HR angle. My partner's actually training to be an HR person, an HR gremlin. Yeah, I'm going to tell her you said that. But I know that, for example, that she would jump at the opportunity to be able to kind of promote a safe and inclusive environment for everybody. I think whilst it's not always possible for you to choose a workplace based upon their culture and environment, I think sometimes you need to realize that you deserve that it's not something that should be a bonus, and it's not something that should feel like a privilege. It's necessary, and it's what we all deserve.
You shouldn't feel obliged to tell everyone at work either. It's at the end of the day, if you're making video games, it's none of their fucking business what you do at home. If you don't want to tell them, if you want them to be aware, there are,
Can I have a quick follow-up for that question? It's more on the actually producing kind of stuff, because if I talk to HR, I'm helping the workplace, and that's amazing because it's a great stuff. But how do I walk into a room and say, hi, you forgot to add me to the meeting, but I have insights for you, without just annoying everyone?
I mean, I would not worry about annoying people because they should have had a bit more foresight. I mean, I would exactly do it how you did it. I'd be like, hello, hello. We would have said hello earlier, but you fucked up.
To be diplomatic, basically.
Should
I be diplomatic or not?
Without breaching NDA, can you give us an example?
Well, we are working on new character creation And I want to be sure that our new character creator is as inclusive and also even innovative against the industry as much as we can. And I want to have a voice in that, and not just because I'm a marketing person, but because I want to help them on a more, this is my personal crusade, and I want to help you guys.
Yeah.
Is there not an open forum at the workplace where you can
There
just
is,
say
but the team that does it is not with me, so it would be remote work, and sometimes it's so much easier to just be there in person.
Yeah.
To have that discussion. That's what I mean.
Yeah, it is a really difficult one, and I think that a lot of the diversity efforts are not focused on the right thing. They're focused about getting people in the door, but unless the people who are in the door have a voice, then there's not really any point in them being there. Like you're not actually living up to any of the potential, really. It's a very difficult one. I mean, Claire's advice is...
No, I didn't know you were remote, so my advice of physically busting in, I take it back, to be honest.
But you could just do a cold email. Like I know that I fully understand, having been in your position, the strength that it takes to put yourself out there when when you don't want to rock the boat, but you want to try and do the right thing. And I totally fully get you. And it is really difficult, and all I can say is, just try and find that courage, because it is worth it in the end. And if you get knocked back, you get knocked back. It's not the end of... Well, if they don't want to take your advice, at least you know that you tried. But what I would definitely say is this is an area where having an internal LGBT group really helps, because I think one of the major functions of our LGBT group is not just to have somewhere where we can gossip about all the straight people, although we do. That's absolutely what 90% of the traffic in that chat room is about. But we also genuinely encourage each other to be that voice, because we're all on different teams, we all have different jobs, we all have different roles, but we try to create this small space where we can kind of cheerlead each other and encourage each other to do that and to be the person. We have a game coming out with a gigantic publisher and a gigantic IP that one of the designers felt, because they were in our group, felt that they were able to kind of make an argument about the gender of some gender issues in the character creator, and because they were in our group, they felt the strength to do that, because they knew that we at least had their back, and we might not be in the room, but when they got out of the room, we would be going, yeah, go you, or whatever. So I can only encourage the creation of those.
Just one final kind of reassurance. Just know within yourself that you're helping. Like you're not trying to speak out of turn, or you're not trying to rock the boat. You're genuinely trying to make it a better game for more people. Yeah. And you need to believe that within yourself. You need to know that, and that needs to come forwards in how you speak about it. It shouldn't feel like trying to... I'm just trying to, say this one little thing like, hi, I'm here in the corner. You're helping, you're doing your job. That's part of your job, to make the game as good as it can be. And what you're doing, adding a more diverse voice, or trying to make sure that it reaches as many people as possible, is a good thing fundamentally. You're not trying to annoy anyone. You're not trying to shake things up or degrade anyone. You're trying to improve, and that's your job, and believe in that.
There are ways to communicate, you could just offer your services without being pushy, so they're aware that you're willing to help them. But it is hard, because not everyone is as articulate as we'd all like to be. But I wouldn't be afraid. You'll regret not saying anything if you don't say anything.
In some ways, working remotely is probably easier in some ways, I would imagine. If I put myself in your shoes as somebody that likes to stick an oar in occasionally. But instead of just running into it, if you're in an office, you'd have to you'd have to physically go into a room like this and go, hello, I'm whatever I am, and I have this opinion. Whereas you can do it by email. That's amazing. Write a fantastic email, hit send, and just sit back and see what happens.
Yeah, control them as much as you
I care about this thing. Also, you're in marketing.
So obviously, tweak their interest in, helping to make the game be even better. And yeah, just say what you said earlier. I have this idea. I'd like to help. Hit send. Maybe attach a GIF. I find a GIF helps. Some sort of meme that always sort of like keeps it going.
It's got a cat in it. It usually helps.
I mean, or not cats later. That'll scare people off. But no, just do that. Is there a Slack in your company? Yeah, I mean, just whoever's in charge, just send them a wee DM, be like, "How's it going? Listen, I have these opinions. I'd love to help. If you've got any space for that." And then again, a meme. There's an integrated GIF function. Just use all those powerful tools.
Blame us.
Yeah.
Blame us.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about recruitment. Basically, I'm at an ad agency, and we do a lot of stuff with video game clients, which is great. But yeah, my agency is very, very accepting. One of our designers recently got married to his boyfriend, and like everyone was over the moon and very positive. But it's pretty much just me and him in terms of like the office gays, and I don't think we do any kind of intentional diversity recruiting at all. And it like we're a very like forward-thinking London-based agency, but like it shows. Like mostly we have white straight girls and white straight boys. And if you're kind of junior in a company and you're not in HR, that kind of thing, suggesting that you pursue, more of a diversity initiative. I mean, it's a bit like Lisa's question, like how do you make those suggestions? Because at the moment I would feel like I'm kind of just being like, hey, I want more gay friends in the office.
Which is valid. Does your T-shirt say "Don't trust girls"?
Yes,
I think that should be the forefront of any recruitment drive. Really, that should be it. No, I mean, you're a row behind Liz Prince here, who is running the G into Gaming initiative. She would be somebody great to have a chat with, or the organisation that she's in charge of, Amicus. They're somebody that I've worked with, and I send people that way because they don't just want to help people get jobs that are great for the jobs. They really care about diversity. But your problem is, how do I get the people who would be in charge of getting in touch with the likes of them? Again, the only way to do it is to send an email. Be like, listen, I mean, I'm assuming you enjoy working there. I mean, so you start with the positives, yeah. So you're like, I really like working here. Everything's great. It just would be nice to see more diversity. I think that I've read a lot of case studies that, and then if you can find links, that diversity really helps with the profitability in every sense of a word for a business. So you just need to, somebody needs to say something to somebody, and that's the only way, because if you don't say anything, nothing will happen. So again, it's the HR gremlins. We're going to have to make some sort of contact with them. I'm so sorry. But yeah, you need to make some sort of contact with them.
If you just get all your LGBT friends to spam the company their CVs.
I thought you were going to say riot.
No, spamming. Just gentle spamming.
Gentle spamming.
It's creating a noise. Unfortunately, it really is. You're just going to have to sort of find a constructive way of doing it and stand up and say, look, this needs to change. That there are very valid reasons why more people need to. This organisation needs a bit more of a rainbow flying over the top of it.
Sometimes you need to sell your ideas. Think about it like you're selling a product. How am I going to back this up and make them convinced that it's good, kind of thing. That's one way of looking at it. Hello, Liz.
I always forget. Even if we forget the ROI and the bottom line and everything else, your customers or the customers of the ad agency will be enormously diverse. And there's one of the bottom line reasons for recruiting actively from a diverse talent pool. So it's really easy. And I was talking about it for hours and hours this morning, apparently, just about the unconscious bias that goes into the recruitment process typically. That's where you have to start, is kind of you being part of the recruitment, for example, will give a whole new meaning to the interview process and what you see and what people have to actually achieve to become part of the organisation, as well as actively. I mean, forgive me, I do understand the HR thing, I really do, but I actually think you have to proactively, every company has to proactively go out and seek a diverse pipeline of talent. And insist on a diverse shortlist. In most games companies, that's actually just trying to get some women into the shortlist as an absolute start of a 10, isn't it? Because we are so male heavy. But if you've got a reasonable gender balance, but actually then you need additional diversity, you have to push that proactively into the shortlisting and do it really openly as a business, as a strategy for a diverse workforce.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think particularly with advertising, as somebody that runs magazines which has advertising in, we talk to a lot of brands, mainstream brands that are trying to do LGBT advertising. And so they just stick two white boys on the front of a hotel or whatever and go, done, that's LGBT advertising done. It's not. And I think in the same way that you need more people in that room, you need different voices within the LGBT community to say, no, one advert doth not make LGBT advertising, because in the same way that two males at the front, obviously freezing out, well, there goes the lesbians. And then you've got people that, I mean, the gym fit guys, obviously. I really sort of push back against that, because I come from, one of our other magazines is related to the bear community. And so we have a huge sort of thing about pushing back and saying, no, there are other sizes than small. And I think by having the multitude of voices, you can sell that as the reason why you need those people in that room, because for the good of your clients, for the good of the customers.
Fabulous. I think we'll wrap up there, shall we? So, thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Can we have a round of applause? And thanks for inviting